Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Waiting Since 57, the Detroit Lions podcast. I'm Adam. Producer Stu is behind the scenes. Give us a follow over on YouTube at Waiting Since 57 and on Instagram at the same handle to keep you up to date on all things Lions. This weekend was a painful weekend, and so we are going to go ahead and just tear that Band-Aid off and get directly into this. I was on my way out to a brewing conference on Sunday, and so I was listening to the game on the radio on stream or whatever, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't easy. What happened here? I do love football cliches. Our man Dan Campbell he's not afraid to throw a few around. He has a few of his favorites, but I do appreciate how straightforward and transparent Dan is with stuff. What we're going to try to dig into today a little bit. First half of the show, we're going to be digging into this Lions Vikings recap, and then we're going to look ahead to the week ahead with the matchup against the Commanders, maybe a little bit of stuff on trade deadline. I don't know if you know, but Ahmed Gardner got traded for 2 first-round picks. That's right, sauce. But anyways, we'll dip into the sauce later. But yeah, a couple of things from watching this game was people were talking a lot about the blitzing packages that the Vikings like to throw at you, in particular, Brian Flores, their defensive coordinator. Coming in off the bye, you would hope that the Lions would be rested, prepared, and ready to roll with something like that. Obviously, having that time to heal up a little bit, all that stuff. And beyond the first drive, they looked fantastic. And beyond that, they looked sloppy. Got called for a lot of penalties. Couldn't move the ball on the ground. There was a lot of ugly stuff, and I think it starts with, I feel like Flores kind of, from a game plan standpoint, it feels like we got out coached or out hustled or not recognized. Our guys weren't recognizing things, so we're going to juxtapose a couple of different things here in a second. But my gut kind of is I feel like one of the areas we got beat was by Brian Flores. And the scheme, the way he schemed things up, he actually put us in a situation with the way he was sending pressure to where he was actually able to minimize certain players. I thought it was really interesting when, from a defensive standpoint, they were able to take Gibbs out of the game. We talked about last week about how Gibbs has been taking over the backfield split here in Detroit, and it's not like a massive Christian McCaffrey type role or anything like that, but he's definitely taken over the majority of snaps in the backfield, the majority of the passing down work, and I believe it was on like 40 to 45 snaps. Gibbs was forced into pass protection on 16 of those 40-some snaps. That's the most he's played, ended up in pass pro this season. I think it was a clever thing to watch the opposing defense be able to neutralize a player by putting him into a role that, quite frankly, I don't think either of us, anybody's super excited about watching him do. I'm excited about him catching passes out of the backfield. I'm excited about him running up the middle when there's a hole wide enough to drive a truck through it. You know what I mean? But that's not what we were able to do this weekend against the Vikings. You know, in Campbell's presser, because I listened to Campbell's presser, which I think he's great in a press conference. First of all, he can be funny and whatever. I watched his post game, and in the post game, he had some interesting stuff to say, and I think that there was some frustration in there as well. But he said in his pressure that the Vikings didn't do anything as far as the exotic blitzes. And then he says it wasn't anything that we haven't seen before, because the press was asking him, you know, people always, first of all, people love using this term exotic blitzes, exotic packages. But what exactly does some of that stuff mean? And so they'll talk about these stunts that a defensive line will do, and go ahead and check out this GIF that we have running up here right now. What it's showing, it's showing that defensive end and that defensive tackle are going to be switching spots, and there's various ways that you can do that. And what that can do is that can create a lot of havoc for the offensive line. It's not a situation where you're just going to be able to have an offensive lineman cleanly against one defensive lineman. There's a lot of moving, there's a lot of shifting, and the need for good communication on the offensive line is really accented when you have things like this going on. Now, I'll be completely honest. You know, as far as these exotic blitzes, they talk about, you know, being able to disguise them well. Okay. Apparently it just seems to be something that Brian Flores does well, because it's what they talk about. It's what they talk about with these guys, and they've been doing this for years. They like to put a lot of pressure on the offensive line and on the quarterback with these blitz packages. Also, they were getting some guys back. Minnesota had some players coming back from injury as well. When they were talking to Goff at his post-game presser, Goff seems to feel as if they were throwing, and it seemed to be going a little bit against what Dan was talking about in his presser. But he said, you know, they did throw some unexpected pressure looks at us. He said they always do a good job with their various ways of throwing pressure at you. When I was watching Campbell's press conference, I feel like his thought was that even if we didn't cover explicitly this, explicitly that, we've seen them do this stuff for years, and we should know. We should be able to communicate through those things. And if you remember the last time you felt like this about a Lions performance, it was probably week 1, where we got our tails handed to us, and they had a tremendous amount of pressure up front. Goff was under duress a bunch in that game as well. And they chalked it up all to communication. Okay? Sometimes you get beat physically, sometimes you get beat mentally, and sometimes you get beat both. I'll be honest, it seems like we got beat both ways this weekend. JVS, good to see you in the chat. Yeah, he says he's glad to see JJ back, but he wishes it was a week later. I do too. I mean, I would have loved to see JJ as well, just as long as the Vikings lost. We will be dipping into some stuff, even some funny stuff surrounding JJ. Yeah, man, these defensive looks got us busted up, and I think we looked flat. And then as the game went on, we started stacking up injuries on the offensive line. And I know at least for one of them, and it may have been Mahogany. Don't quote me on that, but I think that it was. They were talking about how when you get all these crossing linemen and people shifting responsibilities, that you can get really bodies flying everywhere in there, and it can create a situation where sometimes you get tangled up. Okay, and our offensive line got absolutely pummeled in this game. O-line desolation. Christian Mahogany, broken bone, apparently best case scenario. As far as I know, they have not said what bone that is, but they were potentially at one point concerned about some ligament, soft tissue damage. Campbell was saying that, it really was best case scenario to have a broken bone in that instance. That's not a good feeling. Also, Tate Ratledge left the game briefly with a shoulder injury. Last I've heard, Campbell said he's going to be okay. Sewell left holding his shoulder, ended up going back to the locker room, but never missing a snap. No report yet on him. I didn't have time to check practice report for today. It's not uncommon for players that get banged up to get a DMP or a did not participate or practice on Wednesday, but then try to work them in through the course of the week. I would definitely keep an eye on that Thursday, Friday practice window. Ideally, you can get away with some, with some partial practices, but you would like to see a full participation. But for some of your guys that are real studs, sometimes they can try to trot them out there in pregame warmups and see where they're going to get. What else? Decker also is dealing with a combo of both knee and shoulder issues. Campbell said after the game that they're going to have to wait and see what he has going on after the pain meds that he was on for that game to wear off, so they could see where physically he's at the rest of the way. Sometimes I don't think we have an appreciation for what it actually takes to get and keep some of these guys on the field. But yeah, man, it's a bad feeling. It's a bad look. Again, I would keep eye on practice report throughout the week to see who we could get going in there. Kind of speaking of this beat up offensive line, in 17 games last season, the Lions offense recorded a 3-and-out possession just 25 times in 182 drives. That was second best in the NFL. Detroit came into Sunday's game having already recorded 16 3-and-outs in 7 games and 78 possessions. They had 4 more Sunday to give them 20 so far this season. So, when you see stats like this, I do think that you need to. We always have outliers. Okay, what the Lions have been doing offensively the last couple seasons is very hard to replicate. The fact that going into this game they were still third in the league in points scored, it's very good. All right, it's a very good thing. They're not falling apart. I don't think that John Morton is completely off the hook here. Keep in mind, though, that we are talking about a very beat-up offensive line, a new offensive line, a fundamentally different line than they had last year. And in my mind, that O-line is probably going to be the number one predictor of success of your offense, right? So with the turnover that they've had, with some injuries that they've been dealing with, it's interesting, but I would like to see some things change offensively. A little bit later, we're going to get into and talk about Jamo's role, what's going on there. I don't know. It's just been a rougher than you would like to see start. And I do think it's especially seeing that offense stall out and not be able to move the ball at all. The 3-and-out thing is a relatively big deal. It's not just the fact that you're immediately turning the ball over. It's layered in with the fact that you're not getting your defense rest. You're not eating up time of possession, which is obviously it's another form of defense from the offense scoring points. Yeah, there's just a lot going on there, and they really aren't getting it done. One positive that I do want to talk about was Jack Campbell. I'm not going to dive too much into that sack that he got called for roughing on. If you would ask me just off the top, was that hit on McCarthy a roughing the passer? My gut would tell me it was, just because that's how they call the game now. Do I think it should? No. I don't think it looked like he drove the quarterback into the ground. I believe that's the verbiage that they use as one of the myriad of things that can get you a roughing the quarterback call flag. But Jax looked awesome, man. Jax looked awesome. He's really having a breakout year. I believe this is his fourth game. This is his fourth consecutive game recording a sack. I think it explains the lack of significant extension that with that situation with Anzalone during the offseason, because if you remember, Anzalone was kind of doing, I think he was kind of holding in. That's what a lot of players are doing right now, a little bit of a hold in. They'll show up, but they'll be injured, or they'll have a hamstring tweak or something like that. But as soon as that extension hits, they're immediately healthy. But Anzalone is not the youngest guy on the roster. And I don't think that the Lions are looking to spend money on aging guys. Off the top, I'm going to say Anzalone is he's on the other side of 30, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I think he's on the other side of 30. And as far as a flat out extension, different positions age differently. He is 31. It makes it hard investing money in those guys that start getting around 30 and over. There's a little bit of an age cliff there. So some things have been changing. Quarterback's a little bit different because of how differently the game is called and how easy it is for these guys to stay healthy comparatively. That's throwing no shade at Jade Daniels. We'll dip in on him later. But you can see why the Lions were not excited to be dumping a whole lot of money through an extension on Anzalone. I'm sure that they would love to keep him past this season, because I think he is up after this season. But Campbell has just really stepped into the role. Really is turning into the quarterback of that offense. He's been improving in pass protection. And the thing that surprised me is to see the amount of times I see him in the backfield putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. One thing that I thought was interesting was, as one of our faithful listeners, JVS shouted out in the chat. This was start number 3 for JJ McCarthy. This is my age showing, but increasingly when I see these young guy quarterbacks, it makes me feel like a very old man. They look like kids. JJ McCarthy is one of those. Stat line for McCarthy in this game: 14 of 25 for 143 yards, 5.7 yards average, threw 2 scores, ran for 1, did throw a pick. Scrambled 9 times, ran 9 times for 12 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. You can look at that and you can look at that rushing element and not really connect the dots on that. You can see, okay, he rushed 9 times for 12 yards. He didn't really hurt us on the ground. But basically all those yards, I believe it was 9 of those 12 yards or 8 of those 12 yards were that scrambling touchdown that he has. With a guy like JJ, he's not like a Lamar level athlete. But I do think he has some upper level athleticism. It's going to be interesting to see how he puts it all together. People have had a lot of takes on him. one thing that I will say that the most impressive thing that he had going on was, I believe it's his Instagram. Maybe the most interesting stat of the night was he was 10 out of 10 on his troll of the Detroit Lions on Instagram when he posted a picture of himself on the field and the caption read, "Kneecaps intact." That's an elite performance. Okay. I didn't feel good about it, but I had to respect it. You know, he's a young guy. He has the traits. He's played 3 games. And a lot of times people say, well, he's only played 2 good quarters out of the 8 that he played in those first 2 starts. He did end up having one overall solid game, getting a win. The other game that he played that he did not look good in was against Atlanta. And going into week 9, well, you know, I don't think we realized how good Atlanta's pass defense was going to be at the start of the year. At that point, they had only allowed over 200 yards passing one time, and I believe that was to Tua and the Dolphins, and they gave up 205 or 208 yards. They have been very tough against the pass. So we get 2 games with this kid, and then people really want to start leaning into this soft benching thing. Is he a bust? Is he being benched? And then they had the shoulder injury stuff with that was Wentz, right? It sounds crazy to think. It is Wentz, isn't it? They had Wentz backing him up. Anyways, and then finally, you know, Wentz is so busted up he can't play, so they throw McCarthy back in. I do think they wanted him healthy. I do think they wanted to be able to coach him up some more. I think it's too early to be able to tell what the kid's going to be. One thing I will say that you see with him, and I saw with that you see with a lot of younger quarterbacks, ball placement is can always be tough. You know, accuracy, understanding all your calls, remembering your footwork, having all that stuff just be second nature going into a new system with new coaches, new pressures coming into the NFL. It's hard to get all those things in line immediately. Just from an accuracy standpoint, you could see little times throughout the game where receivers are reaching behind themselves to make catches or missing catches that are off target. I think that first touchdown to Justin Jefferson, listen, great pass, great play. But if the defensive back had his head turned, and I wanted to say that might have been a make on that coverage, but the ball wasn't lofted in over the shoulder. So if I'm Justin Jefferson, or if I'm the defensive back, the ball travels fairly close over the shoulder for this catch here. It didn't drop in like in kind of rainbow fashion here with it. I think a better cornerback would easily be able to knock that ball down, get that head turned around, because that it was a ball that could have been knocked down. But hey, he threw the touchdown pass. It's a touchdown. It counts, right? But I think that's something that you're going to see that can be cleaned up for people. You know, Kevin O'Connell had this kind of reputation for being this quarterback whisperer. He's got me eating my words, or he had me eating my words about Sam Darnold. I was trashing Sam Darnold all last year, and apparently Darnold is still Darnolding this year, which I don't know. I guess I feel fine about it, but I don't know. Sometimes I like my priors to be confirmed, and he's not confirming my priors. But, you know, sometimes it takes these guys time, you know. All that said, he hit Naylor on a very tough first down pass at the end of the fourth quarter that basically sealed the ball game. So, you know, he did what he needed to do to get the win. He did what he needed to do to get the win. You know, in a nutshell, I think Campbell summed it up really well when he said that they lost in all 3 phases of the game. They turned the ball over. They look flat. And they still only lost by 3. I think that game, that game could have been a much larger margin, a much larger margin. And I feel like as Lions fans, we watch a game like this, we know that feeling. It feels terrible, and you want to know if it's all falling down. I don't think that's the situation. There's plenty of teams with a worse record than the Lions, and people are like, oh, these guys are totally in it. Remember, we won 15 games last season, and it doesn't have any, and we didn't get any further in the playoffs, right? In my mind, it's about, yes, home field advantage is good, all those things. We had it last year. It didn't pan out for us. I would take being hot and healthy at the end of the year. Give me a healthy squad that's on a heater. Okay, I don't care if they had 11 wins to finish the season, but if they make the playoffs and they're playing good ball, they're hot and they're healthy, let's see what that run looks like. Anyways, this loss is not the end of the world. Earlier, we mentioned a Jamo sighting. We talked about Jameson Williams last week and what his usage looks like. We talked about the fact that he's primarily getting the ball thrown to him downfield. John Morton made his mea culpa over the bye, and he's apologizing to people. He needs to get this guy the ball more. We did see that ADOT, that average depth of target, just like what it sounds like. He had an ADOT of 17 yards down the field through this season. And in this one, that ADOT dropped down to 9 yards. And so the average depth of target is much closer to the line of scrimmage. And all of a sudden you can see that those numbers come up. Okay. He had, where am I? Oh yeah, he was 4 catches for 66 yards, 1 touchdown on 6 targets. Those targets are easier to come by when they're close to the line of scrimmage. Those targets have a higher completion percentage closer to the line of scrimmage. What I don't seem to understand with him is, and I was just listening to some stuff, and it was talking about, how offenses change over the years. If you remember a few years ago when the Dolphins had Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Achane in the backfield, and still Tyreek Hill, like when he was fully still at the peak of his powers, right? And they had Tua back there before Tua got his brain scrambled up, and they were running all these motions. They were getting wide receivers, running backs at full speed prior to the ball being snapped. They were doing dynamic things pre-snap. And then it looks like people have caught up to this stuff. You know what I mean? You can see a lot of that stuff not working. And one of the things that I don't seem to understand is, and maybe it's a route running skill issue, but if you look at somebody like Rashee Rice out of Kansas City, Rashee Rice is basically he's basically treated like a running back, just played at different portions of the field. His ADOT is incredibly low. I mean, I think his average depth of target has been below 2 yards. He's essentially getting the ball handed off to him. Those short pass plays like that are really like running plays in a lot of ways. It's just putting that player in space, getting him moving. When you have somebody that's dynamic in short spaces like that, you have to be able to get him the ball. You have to be able to get him the ball in those situations. Maybe they don't think he has. Maybe the Lions coaching staff doesn't think that Jameson Williams has that skill set, and so that's why they have him doing cardio. Taking the top off the defense. Maybe that's why. I don't know for sure, But when I see guys like Rashee Rice and how they're getting used, how you can chew people up in the slot and do different things, I don't know. It seems like he would be a fit for that. But yeah. I also want to see kind of my one of my last little gripes here about the game and some things that I want to see change. I'm tired of seeing Sailors run that ball back 25 yards every single time he returns it. We have a lot of playmakers on this team, a lot of dynamic guys. I know we've had some special teams guys injured, and maybe we don't want to be risking certain things like that, but we get nothing out of our kickoff return. We get no explosive plays off of kick return. I know we had Khalif Raymond get a punt return. That's great. That's not what I'm talking about. But I do think we need something more dynamic going on back there. And I think this dude like splits time between fullback and linebacker. I'm not seeing the magic with this guy. Maybe somebody sees something that I don't. But yeah, they're getting no explosives from this portion of the team. Yeah, man, I think that's gonna be a wrap. This kind of stuff hurts. That game, it wasn't fun to watch. The offensive inconsistency. I was listening to one of the Lions coaches today on presser, and I don't know if it was Scotty Montgomery, if it was the passing game coordinator, whose name is slipping my mind at the moment. But they were talking about, like if you compared it to basketball, like you're a team that's hitting your threes, but you're missing your free throws and you're not finishing at the basket, and so the analogy was like, so we'll have the 80-yard run, like when a couple weeks ago when Gibbs had the 78-yard touchdown run, but we can't have all these other tackle for losses, all this short yardage stuff. Because really on first and second down, they talked about wanting to improve, their third down success, but they need to be doing more on first and second down. If you remember last year, watching last year's offense, and when the offense has been clicking well this year, there's many times where they're dealing with 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2. When you get 9 yards on that when you get 9 yards on first down, you can do anything that you want with your playbook. And it was actually interesting to hear today. I was listening to Campbell in his presser, and they were asking him, because he said, well, he wanted to be able to get, Tesla more involved and to be able to do some of these different things. And sometimes when I hear coaches talk like that, it almost sounds like they're saying, oh, we just need to find them more snaps. But Dan went a little deeper on it. And what he was saying is that we need more success on early down so we can include more of these packages that can feature these other people. So I thought that was interesting. It's not just like, oh, well, we're going to get these players out to get more snaps. These players are attached to packages, right? And you have to have the freedom to be able to use those packages. So I thought that was really interesting. When we first started talking about this, I said, we're going to tear the Band-Aid off. I'm not gonna dwell on this one too hard. I'd love to see us come back next week and smack around the Commanders for multiple reasons. And if any of my dear friends out there are Commanders fans, the breakdown that you're going to hear coming up next is relatively non-biased. But let's jump into our Week 10 matchup with the Lions and Commanders. Quite frankly, there should be some pressure on the Lions to get back on track against a Commanders team that are literally watching the wheels fall off. For those of you who were watching last year and saw us get decimated by the injuries, they're going through a lot of the same things we were last year. Yeah, Bags Brews, Adam Makes Beer is a Lions fan too. Let us go indeed. Growing pains have been leaving, but should be better. Got blitzed to hell last week. That is very, very true, man. Very, very true. Give us a follow. Give us a follow. There, I have a YouTube channel just for this. Stay up on your Lions goodies here. But you know, and that's not talking smack, saying that the wheels are falling off. Things have not. This has been a nightmare season for the Commanders. And again, I feel like we can speak with some authority on this as Lions fans because last season was a nightmare season for us in so many ways. Last week, the Commanders no-showed against the Seahawks, just like we did against the Vikings. Jim Daniels is injured again. For some reason, he was still in the game, down 31 points. You can tell me, Commanders fans, you can tell me how everybody felt with him being in the game at that point, apparently by mistake, according to Dan Quinn. He does have a dislocated left elbow, maybe not season ending. Yeah, man. Beyond that, also in that game, I believe it was in that game, Marshawn Lattimore, cornerback, torn ACL, Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver, broken collarbone, Terry McLaurin. He got ruled out yesterday. Not good. It's not good when you're ruled out on Tuesday. Okay. Truly week to week for Scary Terry. Remember, Terry had that holdout, man, or hold in, whatever it was. I don't blame him. You know, there's nothing wrong with a guy trying to make his money. Some really good news. Cheap shot artist Frankie Louvu was expected to miss the game for his fourth hip drop tackle of the season, but he had his suspension overturned. Probably more than likely, so he can play the Lions, so he can presumably run back his egregious helmet-to-helmet hit on Jared Goff, like he did in the playoffs last year, right? But this time he'll probably do it while Goff is warming up pregame. No flag will be thrown. But dirty players do dirty player things. But what I love about this is hip drop tackles are supposed to be one of the number one things that officials are supposed to be getting out of the game. This guy's done it 4 times this year. They suspend him, and then he says, please don't, and they say, okay. Juxtapose that with Brian Branch slapping Juju Smith-Schuster, who we found out afterwards, everybody loved it. Everybody agreed, and it was awesome. But they won't overturn his suspension. But don't get me started on that. But yeah, big picture on the Commanders right now. This team feels buried to me. Okay, they're being crushed by injuries right now. Mariota is going to be throwing to his 2 targets. Primarily are going to be Debo and Ertz. Debo might be a spry 30 years old. Maybe he's 29. Zach Ertz, I think, is 35. Mariota, though, I don't think. Oh, you know, a lot of teams go to their backup quarterback and they are complete toast. That it's not like that with Mariota. I think he fits the system pretty well. You know, he's really been all over the place at this point. But even though he's got, you know, he's not the youngest guy himself, the guy can still scoot, man. I watched the first game that he started in replacement of Jaden. And dude scoots around. That has given us trouble in the past. So I would much rather see a statue back there rather than a guy that can run. But hopefully we can take, advantage of these guys. Thinking back to when they were able to maintain Baker so well in the pocket. That's what I'm hoping to see this week coming up against Washington. I have some concerns with how the old Washington football team has gone about building around Jaden Daniels. I really do feel as if they hit with that pick. His rookie year was unbelievable. And I think that changed everybody's expectation. They obviously defeated the Lions and were able to move on to the conference championship game. And there was a lot of people that is like, ooh, win now window. This is a top 4 team in the league. I don't think that was the case. I think that the Commanders were hot at the right time and had the right matchups. That's not to take away anything that they did last year, but there's some things that really, really concern me. And we're just going to talk about things like from a roster construction standpoint. Okay. So they have their rookie. They have him for 5 years. Okay. They have multiple years where they can build this team through the draft. But what they've done instead is they've traded draft picks and they have signed very old players. According to Philly Voice, they have the Commanders listed as having the oldest average age for their starters, 28.1 years old. And again, we're just talking team building stuff. I understand that they feel as if they're in the Super Bowl window with Jaden, but we've already talked about how I'm not like necessarily a huge fan of this concept of the Super Bowl window. I think they saw the success of last year, not really factoring in the fact that there were some significant outliers and regression lurking in the background. This defense has bottomed out, and this is a Dan Quinn thing, right? He's the defensive guy. This year, they are bottom 3 in pass yards allowed per play at 6.2 yards per play. Third down conversion rate for them last year was 6th in the league. They are at 29th in 2025. And they won several 50-50 games last year. I mean, you remember the crazy Hail Mary finish against Chicago. Multiple games with last-minute wins. That stuff doesn't, you just don't keep running hot on that stuff. Like that's not easy to do. You know what I mean? Outliers are outliers for a reason. And if you were to flip those games or even half of those games, those 50-50 games, the Commanders wouldn't have made the playoffs. Okay. But there is that variance every year. I think they got carried away a little bit. Cliff Kingsbury, their offensive coordinator, proved me wrong last year. I did not think what I saw from Cliff Kingsbury when he was at Arizona was a coach that was not making his offense easier. So an easy case in point is if you are playing a defense where they have a shutdown corner that only plays one side of the field, most offensive coordinators will move that star receiver that may happen to play on that side of the field into the slot to the other side of the field, try to make things easier on their star players. Go for higher percentage looks for their stars. And Cliff didn't do that. Cliff was not a success in Arizona. You can pin that on Kyler Murray too and some different things like that. But when he went to Washington, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, we'll see. I remember telling some of my buddies that are Commanders fans, I don't think much of him. And then he came in last year, and they look great. They look great. Jaden Daniels completes 70% of his passes. Again, that's a huge number. That is probably bound to regress. I was still willing to give Daniels like benefit of the doubt because I believe he only had 25 throwing touchdowns, passing touchdowns. So it wasn't because I was trying to look for numbers that were kind of like outliers for them to say where he couldn't match that again. But that's a doable number for him for sure. But the concern for me with Daniels has always been the fact that if he's 205 pounds, that's a lot. He looks like a little dude. And I'm not somebody that is a big believer in the whole like, oh, all running quarterbacks get killed, right? All running quarterbacks just get destroyed and get injured. I think all NFL players get injured. But what drives me crazy about Jaden is you watch these preseason games. I watched the first preseason game. And the announcers are laughing and they're loving it or whatever, where Jaden, he's 20, 30 yards out or whatever. He scrambles, he doesn't slide, and he ends up scoring a touchdown. And people are making contact with him. And they asked him, either post-game or after they pulled him because he got his snaps. Again, this is preseason. They asked him, why didn't he slide? Why did he go for the touchdown? He said, because I want to score a touchdown. That's great, dude, but it's really, really dumb. You're a small dude. You're not Josh Allen. You don't weigh 250 pounds. You're not 6'4", 250 or whatever Josh is. And even if it was Josh Allen, you should all be sliding. You should all be sliding. I get it because you love the competitive drive that he wants to be out there playing the game, all those things. But this is a little dude. This is a little dude. So anyways, just from a team building standpoint with a lot of outlier things going on with the team, I haven't been crazy about the way they're choosing to build around him right now. There might be some stuff with people catching up to what Cliff Kingsbury has going on because the league is a copycat league. It evolves. They had an entire offseason to look at what they have going on. Now, also, they've been injured. They've been banged up. They haven't been right. But all that stuff plays in. All that stuff plays in. I was always shocked when they were investing all that money into old wide receivers. And yes, they drafted McCaffrey in the third round at wide out, and that might wind up. I don't know. I just feel like it's the wrong way to build. I just feel like it's a tough way to build. And I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, I would rather build through the draft. I'm kind of a conservative guy in that way. So my last not a prediction went sideways when I had the Lions winning last week. I believe we're looking at almost the identical game total. So 49.5 points for your game total. Lions favored by 8.5. But one thing that you should keep an eye on, and again, I'm not putting any money on this game. I don't bet over, so I don't do anything like that. But something you should keep an eyeball on is the weather for that game. They are scheduled. They are predicted to be having AM rain with gusts up to 26 miles an hour during game time. That stuff can seriously affect offenses. So just a couple things to think about. My not a prediction is Lions 27, Commanders 20. Lions get right. I don't think it's going to feel good though. I've got a hunch it's going to be ugly, and I'm not going to feel good about it. But that could just be my Lion syndrome, man. I don't know. I'm torn up about it either way. Couple of notes before we wrap. Trade deadline came and went. It is my understanding that the Lions did reach back out to Frank Ragnow. And Frank is very retired, and good for him. He's earned it. I do wish that Frank made the decision to retire before the Lions drafted. But it's human beings. He can make his decision when he wants to make his decision. I don't have an issue with it. You know, last week I said that, Brad Holmes is going to do Brad Holmes things. And he always does. My favorite picture of Brad Holmes is I don't know if it's a high school or college picture. I think it's high school picture. I just love it. I think it's going to be the one picture that I use consistently in this podcast is the incredibly smug Brad Holmes photo. Melvin Brad Holmes. Yes, Melvin Brad Holmes. But it's been years now, and I think we need to come to terms with a few things. And his team building style may not be for you. He doesn't want to trade. He doesn't want to trade for players. He doesn't want to make big moves. He will trade up. He will trade. He will trade draft capital to move up in the draft. There he is, my man, bro. I love him. I love him, Melvin. Look at that. Look, those are the eyes of a man that says, "Oh, you want me to make a big trade at the trade deadline? You want me to sacrifice future draft capital? Look at my eyes. Not happening. Do you want me to move up in the draft by spending some draft capital? I'll do it." I like how this face can both be like the man come on face, it's not happening face, to it's happening. This face is universal. The crazy thing is this is remember, he comes from the Rams tree, right? It runs so counter to what the Rams were doing. The Rams had the philosophy of F those picks. They didn't care. They were trading first-round picks for everything. Remember what started our turnaround here? Trading a whole bunch of picks for Stafford and Goff. There's an X account called the Goffense, which I just like the name. I didn't think of it myself. But you're seeing how Brad Holmes wants to build this team. And when you talk to, when you hear Campbell talk on it, because he was talking about it in the pressers this week too, they're saying, well, was there anything attractive? And he said, first of all, he said, if the player's good and can help us, that's one thing. But if the financials don't work or the investment is too great that they're asking, he said, I don't even hear about those offers. He said, because that's a waste of my time, because we don't break those rules. He said, you have to be a fit on every level. The talent, the person, and the money all has to be right. If those three things aren't right, I don't even hear about the trade proposal because I don't want to. It's a waste of my time. And he said, you have to understand how we evaluate these situations. He said, yeah, there was plenty of guys where I could be like, oh, solid dudes, talented dudes that we could have traded for, that we could have traded future draft capital for. But at the same time, he said, it's not just, he said, but, we develop our guys as well. And he said one thing that I absolutely loved, and the exact phrasing, I might not get right, but I can give you the nuts and bolts of it. He goes, I can tell you why every single one of the guys on my team can be amazing. Like, he sees what's great in every single one of those people. And he said he sees it because he's been working with them. They've been developing them. They have that relationship. Knowing that for somebody that you're bringing in from the outside, it can be a difficult thing to nail down. I do believe culture is a big deal. You can watch Gardner Johnson is going from team to team. I don't know if something happened to that guy's brain or not, but he always seems to be a little bit of a loose cannon. That guy's ping pong between teams right now. This is usually behavior that's reserved for wide receivers with CTE. But yeah, cultural fit is important. And, Campbell is saying that more often than not, they feel like the people that they've been in the trenches with, they've been grinding with, they've been coaching up, they already know them. And it's just a safer move for them for right now. He said, it doesn't mean that we're never going to do something big and splashy in the future, but that's the goal. And it shouldn't be a surprise. There should not be surprise news articles written about this. You can complain about it. I don't have a problem with anybody complaining about it, because it is an unusually patient approach. I think what we're seeing is this approach is going to make the Lions a playoff team, because they've been a playoff team the last 2 years. I think they're a playoff team this year. I think they'll probably be a playoff team next year. I think they're probably a playoff team until 2030, when most of these players that they have, if you expect, if people stay healthy, if they continue to draft well, that's what it seems like. They're kind of on the plus side of the ledger, and they're building it in a sustainable way. Their core players are all locked up for a very long time, and they seem to be healthy enough cap-wise to continue to do that. But is this approach going to be enough to make this team elite? It's a good question. That's what I don't know. I think this approach is going to prevent me from being the world's most depressed Lions fan. You know what I mean? Because I was that or at least in competition for a very long time with that, Like, as a Lions fan, I can enjoy the fact that I think they're competitive. I think they're fun. I think they're dynamic. I don't know. I think what they're doing is going to make them a playoff team for a long time. Is it going to make them a Super Bowl champion? We'll see. We'll see. That might be what I've got for you. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you can give us a follow over on Instagram, even more importantly, a follow on YouTube, and then like, share, all those things. That stuff really helps to get the word out about this Lions content that you love. So I'd appreciate if you share that stuff around. That's a huge help. I'm kicking around some different things for the podcast, so I'm always up for feedback. You can shoot me DMs over on Instagram, or you can just leave some stuff right in the comments on YouTube. That stuff is always really appreciated. So anyhow, let's get a win against these Commanders. Let's get healthier. Let's keep rolling. Yeah. Anyways, from me and producer Stu, we appreciate y'all being here, and we'll talk to you next time. Cheers.